All right, it looks like we got something going on there. Man alive, what a nightmare. So it looks like I'm trying to get I want to get the conversation showing because I've got people coming at me from Rumble, but this doesn't look that great, does it? Is there a way that I can do it another ways? Well, I'm not really sure what's going on, guys. Just trying to get my situation squared away here, guys. Let's see if this works. How's that? So just bear with me. I'm attorney Michael Ehline, and I'm trying to get my stream to show where you guys can actually see me, and because I've got streams coming at you from Rumble as well as from, let's turn that one off. There we go. All right. Hopefully that's a little bit better. So I'm attorney Michael Ehline. I'm a lawyer licensed in California and Texas. A lot of the people know who I am because I'm one of these guys who doesn't believe in censorship. And so I'm starting to do a lot of my streaming from Rumble. And I invite you to join me at Rumble as well as Patreon. And we're going to start doing non-censored shows. In other words, shows that aren't going to be thought policed by the censors over at YouTube, over at Rumble and Patreon, starting within the next few weeks, where we talk about things that you're not allowed to talk about, verboten, things about big pharma and stuff like that, where if you were to read the side effects off of a jar of medicine, you would have your channel banned on CommieTube for medical disinformation, even though it's right off the side of the actual medication. That tells you what you're dealing with. Okay, that tells you what you're dealing with over here. And as much as I like the platform, the politics don't bode well with me. We know that YouTube and Twitter and a lot of like Facebook, we're all in the tank for the misinformation spread by the White House that, for example, Donald Trump was a Russian asset. We now know that was a lie orchestrated by Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton. And as well as the Hunter Biden laptop, which we now know is an absolutely true story, who they literally got all their Democrat buddies who were at the CIA and the FBI to say that it was Russian misinformation. So the same people who censor my channel are the same people who were involved in all that stuff. So what we're going to try to do is talk about stuff um, on Patreon and Rumble that we won't be able to discuss here. So this is sort of the YouTube version. I like Bitcoin, to be honest with you. I don't like it that Larry Fink is involved in Bitcoin at all. But, we'll talk about that in another show. Today we're going to talk about Duncan versus Bonta. And this is a really, really big deal because the leftist, Marxist, Soviet Socialist Republic of California have done everything they can to limit how many rounds you can have in your magazine. And all right, do you see me now? It's unbelievable. I don't know what's going on with Restream today, but it's automatically, as soon as I hit a drop zone, putting me in a timeout. So I want to make sure you guys can see and hear me before I keep going. Yeah, that's probably true, Marcos. That's probably true. So I don't know what happened, but I hit a drop zone, and as soon as I did, it automatically um, took me out of the stream, which is the weirdest thing I've ever seen. Just take a look, make sure that everything is good to go. All right. All right, right on, Age Go. Okay, so basically, here's how this works. I've told you guys before, I'm a natural law rights attorney, and our academic system is run by the far left. And so, because of that, our children in the public school system and in the academic institutions have basically been brainwashed into hating America, unfortunately. They've been told that tariffs are bad, that we need to have this Marxist income tax system, which didn't exist prior to 1913. And we had a tariff based economy. Americans didn't pay income taxes, and we had unprecedented economic prosperity. So, with the centralized banking system, we've seen people like Larry Fink and then Scheinbaum over in Mexico trying to convince the population, primarily the low IQ, low information peasants, that people who are critical thinkers are evil. People like our founding fathers are evil, and critical race theory is being taught. And basically, they're trying, in my opinion, trying to start what amounts to be a race war. And one of the first things that they all try to do is to disarm us. They want to take away our right to keep and bear arms. And it starts with, I guess they call it the rule of 1,000 cuts. And so they'll start with, well, there might be a school shooting, right? So we need to ban everybody's AR-15 because there's more AR-15s used in school shootings, right? Well, that makes sense because it's the most commonly used firearm in the world. Well, besides the AKMS-47 platform, but in the United States for sure. So it's just like saying more Honda Civics are involved in car accidents than any other car. So we need to ban Honda Civics to reduce car accidents. They never focus on behavior or education. And so I just wanted to lay a foundation because I am a lawyer, like how absurd these arguments are, these logical fallacies that are primarily pushed in the public school system. Now, for those of you who don't believe me and say, oh, this guy's a conspiracy theorist, well, the National Education Association has formed or is in the process of forming an alliance with the World Economic Forum. And these are the guys who say that common people like you and I will own nothing and be happy. Their stakeholders like Bill Gates want to feed us crickets and inject all of our food with so-called vaccines, right? And put this appeal coating on our foods and fruits, our fruits, to keep them fresh. And any doctor or scientist who speaks out against it as being toxic is silenced, has their YouTube channel censored or timed out or shadow banned. So that's another reason why I think that Rumble is a good place to go if you don't want to be censored. Because if you want to have free thought, you can't allow someone to say, we're going to demonetize your channel if you start speaking the truth. No, that's just a control system, guys. So just think about that. So let's talk a little bit about what's going on. So people like Larry Fink and Bill Gates and Gavin Newsom, people like that weirdo who was in charge of Canada, they want to be able to use digital currency as a way to control you, and they're basing it on the communist Chinese model. So that is, just to answer your question about do I like Bitcoin? Well, I liked it much more when BlackRock wasn't getting involved in it, that's for sure. Because BlackRock, Larry Fink, he's the guy who's behind DEI and ESG, basically saying we need to force corporations to do what we want, like put a less qualified female or a transgender in a position of authority based upon their sexual preference or proclivities or their gender or their race as opposed to their qualifications. It's called affirmative action, and that's what they want to do. They don't, it's a way, because apparently white people are evil, and so they push this narrative in the school system called critical race theory, that white people are irredeemably racist and it's impossible for black people to be racist. And, basically, it sounds like racism to me. I don't know about you guys. And so one of the things that they all have in common, all of these leftists have in common, is they want to ban firearms. And they say, oh, no, we don't want to ban firearms. Obama said he wants firearms laws like Australia. Well, good luck getting a firearm in Australia, guys. And we know that the number one thing that an oppressive government wants to do first is to take away the firearms from common citizens. That's what they do. They want to disarm the general populace. That is always the goal. Because, as Mao Zedong said, all power flows from the barrel of a gun. And that's just the way they think. So, and they know it. So the left will say, and your professors will say, they'll be real dismissive. Oh, we don't want to ban guns. You're crazy. Who says they want to ban guns? Well, if you look at the history, you can see clearly they do want to ban all firearms unless it's for their cops or their politicians to protect their political class, right? And so what really sparked the American Revolution, contrary to what most people have been taught in schools, is when the king decided to seize our powder houses, to take away our gunpowder. And that's when the war sparked off and we won our freedom. And so let's get into Duncan versus Bonta, because it's a very insidious way that these Marxist judges have continued to promulgate and push this narrative. And so the first thing you have to understand is, prior to the Bruen decision, after the Heller case came out, they started pushing this narrative that, well, there's a compelling governmental interest that outweighs the needs, a needs-based test of the common citizen to keep and bear arms. And one of the arguments they used is dangerous and unusual. So, as usual, they completely misinterpreted the common law definition of dangerous and unusual to mean that an AR-15, because it's black and it's kind of racist, right? Because it's black, and it looks like an M16, well, because it looks that way, it's dangerous and unusual, even though it's no different than any other semi-automatic rifle, right? Any other semi-automatic centerfire rifle. And all that means is you can squeeze off as many rounds as you can by squeezing the trigger. You don't have to pull a bolt back or you have powder, muzzle load it with black powder. So what they say is, well, it's dangerous and unusual. These are military weapons and they're dangerous. Well, of course, because the common militiaman is entitled to have military small arms. And that's laid out very well in the Heller case. So, of course, I mean, that's what we are. Every male 16 and over is automatically a member of the irregular militia. Remember, there's two types of militias. There's regulars and irregulars. And your birthright and duty as a male 16 and over is as an irregular militiaman. In fact, our founding fathers did not want to have a standing army for longer than a period of 2 years. And that's why to this very day, there has to be a Senate appropriation to refund the Army. Now, the Navy and Marine Corps are the only ones that are constitutionally required, and that's to protect our borders, because the job of the federal government is primarily to protect our borders from foreign invasion. And when Sleepy Joe used your tax dollars to pay NGOs to flood our country with illegal aliens, well, that was done, in my opinion, was treason, because they're using the U.S. Census, the United States Census, to redistrict all of the red states blue. And the way they'll do that is they'll create a sanctuary city. They'll fill it up with hundreds of thousands of illegal aliens. And upon the next census count, the Democrat Party will pick up maybe 5, 6, 10, 20 new House seats. And because they knew they couldn't win elections by going after your guns, they knew they can't win elections by telling boys that they're really born in the wrong body and the boys need to wear dresses. They know that parents aren't going to buy that, but that's what Larry Fink and the leftists push, like the BlackRock people push that narrative that they want. Somehow that's going to make America a better place, but most Americans don't go along with that. So the only way they could get power is to use illegal aliens to increase to redistrict, to create new voting districts. And that's why they're so freaked out about Trump kicking out all the illegals and not counting them in the census, because they know they're going to lose about 50, count them, 50 House seats nationwide. California will lose at least 5 once the illegals are either deported or they're not counted in the census. Now, let me ask you this. Do you think the Democrat Party will have any use for illegal aliens once they're not counted in the census? I would say there's a high likelihood that they'll no longer care about illegals anymore if they can't pick up power by using them. And the issue that I have being a libertarian, because I don't support either party, is that at least with the Republicans, we get some decent justices in power. And so right now, we're in a real strong position with Duncan versus Bonta. Now, Bonta is the Attorney General of California. We know California is a leftist, Marxist, Soviet-style single-party state. They have a supermajority, and they were able to get that with illegal aliens. California would be a red state if not but for illegal aliens having been used to redistrict the entire state blue. Give me a bunch of ones if you understand that. Give me a bunch of twos if you think I'm a crazy, radical, right-wing Republican. I'm just using common sense. So let's talk a little bit about what's going on. So let's talk about the misinterpretation of dangerous and unusual used by these Marxist judges and courts. Dangerous and unusual is simply a time, place, and manner restriction under common law to regulate when you can display a firearm or carry it in public. And that had to do with, for example, if you're using a bunch of Clydesdale horses to tow artillery pieces through a town center in the militia, well, that's dangerous and unusual. That can scare women with their children and pushing their babies in little baby carts. And so that's what dangerous and unusual means. It never meant the type of firearm. It meant the time, place, and manner in which the firearm could be towed or presented in public. It had nothing to do with the actual firearm itself. So all gentlemen conceal carried. All gentlemen carried a blade or a derringer at one point prior to these Marxist gun laws. It was just a standard thing. You weren't a free man unless you were armed. That's just how society looked upon it. The King of England didn't like it. The centralized bankers who have their Ponzi schemes don't like it. And so their primary goal is to strip you of your ability to fight against it. And that is the real reason that we have these crazy gun laws. So let's talk a little bit about what California did. So we had Judge Benitez, we call him Saint Benitez, I think he's down in San Diego, find that California's restriction on what are really called standard capacity magazines is unconstitutional because magazines are an integral part of a firearm. And so what happens is these Marxist courts, they always like to use semantics. And so they call them large capacity magazines or LCMs. And if they could get enough people to keep saying large capacity magazine, they've won the battle. So the first lesson of the day is no, it's called the standard capacity magazine. California has determined that you only need 10 rounds in your weapon unless you're a law enforcement officer. Then it's okay for you to have, in other words, unless you're part of the sovereign political class, you can only have 10 rounds in your magazine. Well, we know that the more rounds you have in the magazine, the more effective the firearm is. It's an integral part of the safe and effective use of your firearm. So they banned them. And what ended up happening is it went up to the Ninth Circuit and to a 3-judge panel. And that case was, an injunction was issued enjoining the state from enforcing the magazine ban law. And of course, it went to the full panel, which is called en banc, and we know that most of the judges at the Ninth Circuit are Democrats, of course. And so that decision was basically overturned. And the U.S. Supreme Court at one point had denied a certiorari on magazine bans. So the Second Amendment rights community went bananas, like, oh my God, oh my God. And by the way, thanks for joining me from Rumble today, guys. Please make sure to read the comments that I have up there because I've got all my comments coming in from Rumble and Patreon, and I definitely would encourage you to start using Rumble and get off of censorship too. If you really are a patriot and you love your country, it makes sense that you would start using platforms that support your unalienable rights to keep and bear arms, your right to talk about vaccine efficacy without having to risk having your channel suspended, and stuff like that. Would you agree? Give me a bunch of ones if you agree with that, because I think that that is just common sense. Because it's un-American to put your advertisers ahead of the people who use your platforms, in my opinion. So, in any event, I'm almost at the gym. Duncan versus Bonta. So let's talk about it. So what ended up happening is when the case was originally decided, the Bruen case had not been fully developed. But now we have the Bruen case that says there has to be a historical analog justifying the banning or restriction of firearms. It's no longer is there a compelling government interest in disarming the people, because there's always a compelling political and government interest in banning people's right to keep and bear arms. It's one of the best ways that you can silence people and keep them from trying to exercise their unalienable rights. So, hey, Salt Shaker, good seeing you. But you will be seeing some comments coming in from Rumble. So instead of looking at the sidebar on YouTube, look at my video, and those are the real comments. Those are the comments coming in from all over the place. So, and I encourage you to go over to Rumble. If you want to give me a super chat or donate to the channel, go over to Rumble. Don't do it at YouTube. They've basically, as soon as I started talking about abolishing the Federal Reserve Bank, they demonetized my channel. So we know who they serve. And so, and I'm fine with that because I'm a lawyer and I have a real job. I do my commentating on YouTube to help educate the public. Right. That's right. No reply. So just really quickly before I go work out, I'll just break it down for you. Now there is what's called the jurisdictional split. And a couple of our, I think it was Alito and what was it? Alito and, let's see if I can find it, Kavanaugh dissented originally when there was a petition for cert criticizing the lower courts for misapplying the Bruen decision. And in other words, criticizing the Ninth Circuit. And what ended up happening here is as of August 17th, there is now a pending petition for certiorari at the U.S. Supreme Court. Now, what the Ninth Circuit did is they stayed the ability for, in other words, if you bought standard capacity magazines during that period that the injunction that the state was enjoined from enforcing that stupid law, what ended up happening is all these people went out and bought all kinds of standard capacity magazines. They went to Nevada, they went to Arizona, and brought back in standard cap mags. And so what ended up happening is that's sort of grandfathered in. And now there is a cert. Hey, happy birthday, Salt Shaker. And so there's the state currently protects people who legally possess these standard capacity magazines. So anyways, that period was called Freedom Week before the full panel of the leftist judges at the Ninth Circuit en banc reinstated California's law. You can still keep the ones that you bought. So there's all kinds of people bought hundreds and hundreds of standard cap mags. So if the Supreme Court hears Duncan versus Bonta and rules in favor of the plaintiffs, it should be able to invalidate these magazine bans, not just in California, but in New Jersey, New York, Hawaii, Maryland, and Massachusetts. So how are they doing this? How are these Marxist courts doing this, and their Marxist politicians like Newsom getting away with this? What they're saying is that if you have more than 10 rounds, that's dangerous and unusual. And since a magazine is simply an accessory of the firearm, it can be regulated. They're saying it's not an integral part of the firearm. And so all they have to do now is say, well, a trigger is just an accessory, right? Or a front sight tip's just an accessory. Or a spring is just an accessory. You can convert it and make it a sliding bolt action and fire one round at a time. We're not doing anything to restrict your right to keep and bear arms. We're just making it safer for them when they want to restrict your rights even more, and you have no way to fight back. In other words, it goes completely against the U.S. Constitution, our Bill of Rights, and natural law, which is where our Bill of Rights flows from. So remember that the way that the left is trying to ban your firearms now is to say all of the components of your firearm, including magazines and even ammunition, are simply accessories, and that they can regulate away those rights by calling it an accessory and then banning it or restricting it, taxing it to where nobody can afford it unless they're rich. And so that is the play. That is their argument. And so Alito is saying that's ridiculous. That goes against the historical analogs in Bruen. Magazines and ammo shouldn't be restricted. It's ridiculous. It's just a backdoor way to restrict your right to keep and bear arms. So that's really what it's all about. And Mia's Tarot brings up an interesting point about marriage. And I guess one of the things that's interesting to me is that all of the states are required to honor marriage contracts, but they're not required to honor concealed carry permits. But why not? Marriage isn't even a right under the Constitution. The Second Amendment is the Second Amendment. Without the Second Amendment, you can't protect the First Amendment or the Third or the Fourth or the Fifth or any of them, because it's we the people's job to enforce our rights. We know the state won't. Once you get politicians like Jasmine Crockett, who put judges in power, who can't even define the difference between a man and a woman, because we know that Larry Fink supported that campaign and he believes in all that weird shit, that we're in a really tough position. And so the only way that people have is a bulwark against unlimited governmental federal power, the anti-federalists such as myself, is to have the ability to keep and bear arms. That's what the Second Amendment is all about. It's not about hunting. It's about being able to protect yourself from all enemies, foreign as well as domestic. So let me see here. So Odin says I have a bad selector. In a way, my first. Oh, that's not good. Um, that's terrible. Well, I thought you meant selector switch, but I'm with you, man. And let me see here if there's any questions for me. So let me see here. Well, anyways, guys, I'm going to go work out, but I just thought you might like to know what's going on. So it looks like, I believe, because now there's a jurisdictional split, and we definitely have the Bruen decision in our favor, that the Duncan case will be overturned, and CommieFornia is going to have to start protecting the rights of we the people to keep and bear arms. And of course, once the illegal aliens are deported from this country, the Democrats will lose about 5 House seats in California, and they'll just stop passing these laws because the state's going to turn red again. The only way the Democrats are able to gain power right now is by using the U.S. Census to redistrict the country blue, because they know their ideas are unpopular, right? They know that. So that's what's going to end up happening. So we just have to stay positive, guys, and pray to your creator, because all of our rights come from our creator, that we'll be protected so we can protect our families. So anyways, guys, with that being said, I hope you enjoyed the show today. Make sure to like and subscribe. Make sure to save. And also, make sure to always carry a couple of extra mags and always be armed, because you never know when the thought police are going to take down this channel. Semper Fi, do or die, guys. I'm looking forward to seeing you and hearing you over at Rumble. Go join my channel at Rumble. Just type in Michael Ehline at Rumble. If you want to donate to the channel, buy a copy of my book about how to become a lawyer with no law degree or undergrad, you can go to my YouTube channel under the description. You can click that link for $19.99. You too can learn how to become a lawyer without going to some communist-run school system where they brainwash you into hating your country. And you can also donate to me over at Rumble, where the donations actually go towards a free speech platform that doesn't constantly try and censor you and silence you. So again, with that being said, make sure to like and subscribe. Make sure